Welcome to Lotus Lane Daily. I'm glad you're here. Today's wisdom is for anyone going through something hard. You know that feeling when you're sitting across from someone who is exactly your type. The pull is immediate, physical, undeniable, and somewhere in the back of your head a small voice says, "Not this one," and you ignore it. Again. Because the feeling is so strong and the voice is so small. And 3 months later, or 6 months later, or sometimes 2 years later, you're back at the start wondering how you ended up here again. If this is familiar, you're not weak or stupid or self-destructive, but something is happening that's worth understanding because it keeps repeating itself until you look at it directly. The pattern of consistently being drawn to people who hurt you, let you down, or simply can't give you what you need. This is one of the most common and least talked about forms of suffering in relationships. Everyone experiences some version of it, but for some people it's not occasional, it's the whole story. Every significant relationship has the same ending, even when the person is different. That's when it's worth paying attention. Why your attraction system can mislead you. Here's something that most people find uncomfortable to hear. What you find attractive is partly learned, not innate. From a very early age, you developed an internal template for what love looks and feels like, based on the relationships you witnessed and experienced. And that template doesn't distinguish between healthy and unhealthy. It just marks what's familiar. If love in your formative years came attached to unpredictability, moments of warmth followed by withdrawal, connection followed by distance, your nervous system learned to associate that feeling with love. Not because you're broken, but because that's how learning works. You pattern match, and the pattern you learned is the one that feels like home, even if home wasn't always safe. This is why the emotionally unavailable person feels magnetic in a way the stable, kind person doesn't. The stable, kind person feels comfortable, even pleasant, but not electric. The difficult person triggers something deeper because they match the template. The pursuit feels familiar. The intermittent rewards, the moments when they finally open up, finally show up, finally seem to really see you, feel disproportionately good precisely because they're rare. That dynamic is addictive in a literal sense. Variable reward schedules, getting what you want sometimes unpredictably, are more compelling than getting it reliably. Slot machines work on the same principle. This is not a flaw in your character. It's a feature of your nervous system being exploited by a pattern you learned before you had any choice in the matter. The shape of the pattern. It's useful to get specific about what the pattern actually looks like for you. Most people, when they think carefully, can identify the type: the person who needs rescuing, the person who can't commit, the one who's brilliant and self-absorbed, the one who's warm in private but cold in public, the one who makes you feel slightly inadequate in a way that makes you try harder. There's often a theme. Maybe you're drawn to people who need you, where the relationship is organized around their problems and you feel valued for your capacity to help. Maybe you're drawn to people whose approval is hard to win because winning it feels like an achievement worth having. Maybe you're drawn to intensity itself and confuse the heightened emotional state of a difficult relationship with passion or depth. None of these make you a bad person. They make you a person who learned certain things early and is still operating from those lessons. The good news is that learned patterns can be unlearned, or at least examined so thoroughly that you start to see them clearly before you're 2 years in. An old piece of writing frames this well. To seek reform without changing ourselves is like trying to see our own reflection in the mirror by polishing its back. If the pattern keeps repeating regardless of who the other person is, the place to look is inward, not at the other person. That's not self-blame. It's the only direction where real change is actually possible. What it feels like to break the pattern. This is the part nobody tells you. When you start making different choices, it will feel wrong. The person who is actually good for you, emotionally available, consistent, genuinely interested in your well-being, will initially feel too quiet, too predictable, not enough. You'll find yourself manufacturing reasons why it won't work, reading problems into their warmth, waiting for the catch. That discomfort is actually the signal you're on the right track. It's the feeling of unfamiliarity which your nervous system registers as wrong because it doesn't match the template. But unfamiliar is not the same as bad. Unfamiliar is often just new. The hardest skill in breaking this pattern is learning to distinguish between the dull ache of genuine incompatibility and the discomfort of not knowing how to receive something healthy. They feel similar from the inside, but they're pointing at completely different things. Genuine incompatibility is usually about values, about how someone treats you when things get hard, about whether you actually respect each other. The discomfort of health is more like a low-level anxiety, a waiting for the other shoe to drop, a sense that it can't really be this uncomplicated. Give it time before you run. The pull toward your old type will feel urgent. The impulse to leave the stable situation before it leaves you will feel like self-protection. It isn't. It's the pattern trying to reproduce itself. Practical steps that actually help. Name the pattern before the feeling takes over. When you notice the familiar pull, the specific quality that always gets you, name it out loud or in writing. Not to kill the feeling, but to put some distance between you and it. The feeling is information, it's not a verdict. Slow the timeline down. People who are bad for you tend to move fast. They establish intensity quickly, create a sense of specialness and urgency, compress the emotional timeline so that by the time you see the problems, you're already deeply attached. Deliberately slowing down, not committing to the feeling before you have enough information, is one of the most protective things you can do. Notice how you feel in their absence, not just their presence. The wrong person often makes you feel amazing when they're attentive and terrible when they're not. The right person doesn't give you that vertigo. When they're not there, you're okay. That consistency, not the highs but the floor, is what a good relationship actually feels like. Talk to someone about the pattern specifically, not just the current relationship but the history. A good therapist is ideal for this. If that's not available, an honest conversation with a friend who knows your history can help. The pattern becomes harder to sustain once it's been named and witnessed by someone else. One more thing worth holding. Your true self is not something that already exists inside you. It is something you must create through your own efforts. The version of you who chooses differently isn't waiting to be uncovered. It's built through the slow accumulation of different choices, different moments of catching yourself and asking whether this is really what you want. You're not cursed. The story that some people tell themselves, that they're fundamentally drawn to the wrong people and always will be, that they're cursed or broken or self-destructive in some irreversible way, is not true. It's a story, and stories can change. What's true is that you learned something early that made sense given what you were working with. And that learning is still running, quietly, in the background of your choices. You didn't design it, and you're not guilty of it. But you are capable of seeing it, which is the first step towards something different. You deserve a relationship where you feel safe, not just the occasional moments of warmth, consistently safe, where you can exhale, where someone's consistency is the baseline, not the rare reward, where the work of the relationship is building something together, not convincing someone to stay. That's not a fantasy. It's a real thing that real people have. You can have it too. But it starts with getting very honest about the pattern, which you've already begun by reading this at 2 a.m. That's the wisdom for today. If something here landed for you, share it with one person who might need to hear it too. Take it slow. I'll see you tomorrow on Lotus Lane Daily.